Hello and welcome to the Film Angle. I'm Alex.
And I'm Kris.
And today we are going to be reviewing some new releases for the UK. We're going to be talking about Tar. We're going to be talking about M3GAN, as it's apparently pronounced, according to the Wikipedia article. And we're also going to be talking about some of the blind spots from the Sight and Sound Greatest Films of All Time list that me and Kris are catching up on. So you've got all that to look forward to. But we are, I think, going to jump straight into the second longest film of the year. Tar, directed by Todd Field.
I think it's like the fifth. It seems to be like every big Best Picture potential nominee this year is like 3 hours plus.
Oh my goodness, I know. And we get all these, obviously Tar was released pretty like few months ago, potentially in the States. So a lot of people have had a chance to watch it. That, Fabelmans and Babylon, which have all been out for a few months in the States, we're getting now in January, which means we're getting like 3-hour films to watch every week. It's quite the task.
Yeah, I'm just kind of annoyed that we didn't get the chance to see them last year because all of these movies seem to be like they were made for me. So I'm personally hurt by this. It's good to catch up with them.
They could have made our top 10s.
Especially ramping up to the Oscar season now, though, I think it's a really good time to come into these. And but also, like, it's really hard to sort of center yourself and be like, right, okay, the recency bias thing comes into check because you're watching pretty like prestige-y movies week after week, and they kind of start to blend into one in Oscar season. So I'm sure we'll probably be revisiting a few of these titles as well as the months go along. But yeah, enjoying it nonetheless.
I believe the Oscar nominations will be out as of the time of this episode releasing. I believe it's the 24th of Jan.
Yes. I thought it was Thursday.
So yesterday.
Yesterday, yes.
Yesterday.
I keep forgetting. The time's a big element, and Tar, the movie we're going to be talking about today, covers time pretty significantly in its kind of, not just in its plot, but the themes going on in this. And this movie has got like a lot of themes going on. There's not a single scene that is empty or inconsequential to what the character is about. And this is like the ultimate character piece.
Yeah, for such a long kind of I don't know if I'd say sprawling, but a lot of the scenes kind of linger. Everything feels like there for a reason. Everything feels very efficient. Just to give our kind of listeners some idea as to what Tar is, if they haven't seen it, Tar is a film directed by Todd Field and starring Cate Blanchett, who is Lydia Tarr, a fictional but highly regarded famous composer. And basically the film kind of follows her fall from grace in a way.
Yeah, and the way this movie opens is a statement in itself. It's like it's a 10-minute opening scene of an interview with Tar where she's on stage and her accolades are being read out for what seems about 5 minutes before she even gets the chance to speak or intervene. We are being like set up as like, this is the most gifted person of our time, as a conductor or as a composer. And that's a big thing to live up for both Blanchett as an actor and for the movie too, because this can seem really silly and tongue-in-cheek, but the movie manages to keep that straight face from the beginning and earns the accolades that the interviewer gives Tar at the beginning.
Yeah, it honestly feels like an actual Q&A, which obviously is what they want in a film, but it's so long. It's a really long scene, and a lot of the takes are really long. And you just think, like, Cate Blanchett is honestly phenomenal in this role. She completely takes on the character. She disappears into it. And the fact that she can basically just live and breathe Lydia Tarr in these really, really long scenes is just incredible. It's honestly fascinating to watch her. Like, she's a shoo-in for the Oscar, surely. Honestly, probably the best I've ever seen Cate Blanchett do anything. I would also like to mention, just before this really long scene at the start of the film, we actually we get a small snippet of a phone messenger which kind of sets up some kind of intrigue. But then we go into credits,
Mm.
and the credits are done backwards. And yeah, you kind of, because you've already seen a very, very short clip, you're kind of forced to sit through the credits with, or intrigue.
With
I thought
this
that was a really
ominous
interesting
vocal in the
start.
background as well.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people discuss how this film is about ego, and how ego has kind of enveloped Lydia Tarr and is partially the cause of her downfall. And the portraying the credits backwards at the start is a way to show that the film is aware of this. I don't know if I'm
Mm.
super on board with that. I like the idea that that's what it's going for, but I think it points at a part of this film that always kind of had little kind of always kind of itched me a bit, which was, God damn, this film is pretentious.
But that makes sense for me because Tar in herself, although gifted and knows her stuff, is pretending the whole way through this movie. She not only is Kate Blanchett acting her pants off, but Tar herself is acting her pants off the whole way. It's all a mind game, and trying to the superiority is a big part of it, and the power dynamics. This movie covers so many themes like that.
Yeah, she is playing the part of the super genius composer. Whether she is or not is another thing. Obviously, highly regarded, but one can look at or the auteur theory
Mm.
and be like, is Tar the main person coming up with these musical melodies? As the film kind of shows, it's very much a team effort at the end of the day.
Yeah, and it's very interesting the way that the movie shifts the gender dynamic. As obviously, this movie is kind of really focused in on the Me Too movement and cancel culture and how relevant that is to our time at the minute. And it's very interesting to shift what would typically be in the news or kind of the back of our minds, who we expect this character to be played by would be like a man in his, a balding man in his
Mm.
50s or 60s. He's like a Weinstein or Kevin Spacey, someone who's in a position of power like that. But by putting it in the role of Blanchett and putting it in a role of a woman is quite interesting because it kind of strips the gender away from it. That you come away from not having a bias going into the movie where you're like, all right, this guy's already sleazy. By making it a woman, it kind of makes them, unfortunately, I mean, that's just a human part of us as well. It muddies the water for us as well because we're not really sure going into what's right or what's wrong. That's what this movie is kind of about. It's the ambiguity. I can't come away from this movie thinking that Tar was a bad person or a good person. I feel for her, but I also despise her.
Yeah.
Um, and that's kind of like the thing. There's no really clear answer in this movie, and that's the kind of genius behind it.
Yes, I kind of saw her, like, I think you're right. She's not a perfect person. And I think the power dynamics, she's aware of them, but I think she's also incredibly naive. In
Mm-hmm.
terms of the kind of power she holds over people. She is aware in a professional setting, but I think there's something there in terms of the way she kind of treats her assistants and proteges, where it gets very murky. And it's interesting because I think there's a scene in the Juilliard University very early on
Yes.
where she kind of berates a student for not kind of liking Bach as a composer because of some of his. I don't really know the full history, but I guess he wasn't
Mm.
nice to women or something which would be frowned upon today, and the student doesn't want to get involved with that, and she kind of berates them a bit, and
Oh, it's a uncomfortable scene.
it is
Yeah.
uncomfortable, and you do think she is in the wrong there. But when the video that gets leaked later on in the film, that everybody kind of, you know, quotation marks cancels her for, it is highly edited, and it does kind of twist her words. So
Hmm.
you do get a feeling of, oh, she was bad, but she wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. I've seen a lot of people kind of call this the anti-cancel culture movie. I really don't think that's the case. I think it's really
No.
inspecting it in a quite a mature way. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, 100%. I mean, like the character, there's no easy answer in this movie. And it's really, I think it's both critiquing the student and empathizing with the student at the same time. It's kind of just, it's a real mirror to kind of what's going on. But you're so right. I mean, the auteur conversation is something that goes on not just in this world, the music world that the film is set in, but also the movie world. It's a big conversation. I mean, we all know people like Polanski, Woody Allen, all those guys, Marlon Brando, were all, what they were up to, and Kubrick and his treatment of people in his films. Yet the art is so potent and so culturally significant to how we enjoy cinema that you know we put up with it. We do. I mean, I'm guilty of it too. I mean, I don't know how you feel. I mean, I put on a Hitchcock movie and I'm like, yeah, 5-star masterpiece. The guy knew what he was doing. But you know, in this world of art, which is so separate to professional environments where you work in an office, where it's so clean cut what is right and what is wrong and what is good behavior and what is not. But when you're working with art, which is emotion and usually centers around a theme of what you're doing in real life, it tends to imitate life. And sometimes you're working with people in such close collaboration that unfortunately the art can sometimes bleed and into real life and people can get really mixed up in it. And it's asking that question whether that is justifiable or not too. So
Hmm.
we're as much at stake as the artists here watching the movie.
Yes, yeah, and to kind of you said like, I don't know what your feelings are on this. I definitely see kind of problematic people who have made films that have kind of changed the language of cinema. They are historical artifacts, and you still need to watch those to kind of
Mm-hmm.
understand the language of cinema and how it's changed and history. So yeah, there's no issue putting on a Hitchcock film. I don't think there's too much of a problem putting on an old Woody Allen film. I do think there's a problem if you continue to give these guys money. Obviously, not Hitchcock; he's dead now. But if you continue to give Polanski and Woody Allen money, they don't deserve a voice so much anymore. I think.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's controversial. I wouldn't watch a new Woody Allen film that came out tomorrow. But will I go back and watch Annie Hall? Probably, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Louis C.K. is another prime example, and I used to watch his specials on TV, and the guy's hilarious. Some of
Mm,
his stand up is some of the funniest stuff I've ever seen, and now that stuff come to light and he's basically out of the picture, is does that make what my enjoyment of what that experience was like any worse or better? I still find that really, really funny.
yeah.
Before, and it's interesting. You can't. It's ignorant to look back and dismiss something because you don't agree with the person. You need to be able to understand the past to move on and develop in the future. 100%.
Yeah. That being said, I think that I think it was an interesting element of the film with the student. They continue to say, Buck's just not for me, just not for me, and she continues to kind of
Yeah.
berate him about it. You can see the frustration. I think you're allowed that opinion at the end of the day. If you don't want
Yeah.
to listen to Buck,
Absolutely.
you don't want to listen to Back. Uh, I don't know. I don't know anything about. I mean, I guess I probably have heard their music, but
Mm.
I'm not a bloody genius on composing. Which the film, I don't know if it holds up in front of a room of professional composers, but
Well.
it definitely wants to. But I do think that Lydia Tartt is also in that scene, kind of pushing. Like, I think she knows that she's done some things wrong. She talks about like you can't judge this person just because of what their marital issues were. She knows that she's a bit of an adulterer
Mhm.
that's implied in the film. We see the emails where she's kind of trying to block people from joining other universities because of her opinions on them and stuff like that. She doesn't want her legacy to be tarnished by potentially what she's done, which
Mm.
obviously, in a way, it does kind of happen in the film.
And even her wife, her longtime partner is a victim of that too. I think it's sort of hinted in the movie that she was groomed to let Tar infiltrate her way into the Berlin Orchestra.
Yes.
So there is that sort of distancing that she does with people that she feels profound guilt with. I think it happens with the assistant as well, her protege, but with her wife and her child as well, especially her daughter. That was a
Mm,
really interesting relationship because the scenes that she has with her daughter are so sparse and spare in the movie that we as an audience actually I began to forget that she was in the movie at times, and I
yeah.
think that's kind of like trying to highlight how absent anything emotional or personal in Tara's life is. She is needs to be in control, and music is the only place she knows how to. She's actually, like you said, she's very, very vulnerable. Um, Whenever she is out of her element and not the top of her game, she is like almost like a little field mouse. She doesn't really know what to do of herself, and there are these moments where she is giving the opportunity of redemption. Those small moments, wherever it's like someone sounds like they're being murdered in a park, and she doesn't know how to locate them, or what's going on, and then it decides to abandon that, or just simply the interactions with kids in schoolyard, how she behaves there. She is
How
given
she
moments.
manipulates them as
Oh,
well.
100%. She's given these moments of redemption, yet she's never able to rise and meet those occasions.
Yeah.
And that is something that haunts her. She is being absolutely sort of haunted by these little signs around her apartment. She's waking up with nightmares. The metronome is ticking in the house. Whenever she is berating people like Max, the student, his leg is shaking uncontrollably. And we as an audience are fixated on that just as Tar is, and we're waiting for that moment where she's going to explode.
Yeah.
But she never does. It's like you're always watching somebody who's about to absolutely boil over, and she's narcissistic enough to keep it calm, but not just as nasty as if she
Yeah.
was going to explode.
I loved her hate of irritating noises, the leg shaking, the pen clicking when she
Yes,
grabs the pen
yes.
off his desk while he's not looking just to hide it away. I think there's rattling in the car at some point.
Mm.
I loved how frustrated she was by these things.
And absolutely, I mean, yeah. So I absolutely fell in love with this movie, and the more I talk about it, kind of like when we were talking about After Sun the other week, um, the more I think about it, the more I think it's just such an interesting piece of character study, and it's not just the prestige Oscar bait movie. I think it's got way more
Mm.
going on that Todd Field has on his mind on this movie.
That's interesting because I came into this discussion not knowing how I felt about Tar, and actually discussing it with you, I feel like I've actually enjoyed it a little bit more than I thought. I don't love it as much as you do. I really admire the performances. I admire the camera work, the acting. I just said performances, didn't I? I admire the camera work and the way it's kind of laid out, the way you're just kind of thrown into this world of pretentious composers, and like you're just barely scraping along as to half the things they're saying. I do think the film is incredibly pretentious, but I think it knows it is.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, I came away. I wasn't sure how I emotionally felt about it. You know, it's a very long film to sit through, like 2 hours
of
and
course,
40 minutes. Was I moved at any point? I'm not sure, but I wasn't bored. I was really engaged the whole time.
it does
So
pull you in.
I just kind of felt a bit. I didn't. I've spent the last few days not knowing how I feel about the film.
Mm.
I think I'm a little bit more positive on it now, though, after speaking to you, because we have just kind of chatted about things that we've loved about it, and I can't pick out anything that I explicitly hated. There was nothing that turned me off the film at all. I just wonder if my emotional feelings for it are just slightly muddled.
Well, if I could possibly play devil's advocate to your point of gushing over this movie, I think maybe the only thing that possibly could upset it and is the ending. I think the ending kind of shifts gears a little bit, where we are kind of honed in on a certain realism throughout the movie, and the movie kind of goes into the unrealistic in the last 20 minutes. It highlights the point really well. The fall from grace, the cancel culture is fully set in for this character, but I felt a tonal whiplash there going on in the last sort of 15 minutes, where she is sort of, furiously descended from grace. She is hit after hit after hit, and I find the ending very fascinating, but still something that's like, oh, this is different to the other rest of the movie I saw. So I didn't necessarily hate it, but it was kind of left field.
Okay, I didn't come across that with the ending too much. Um, yeah, I'm not sure. I guess the only thing I wanted to know for sure, like, I think the only thing left ambiguous was the who's doing the phone messages, right?
I didn't even think about that. Yes, of course.
I think that's the only thing that kind of goes unanswered. Because for a big chunk of the film, you assume it's the assistant played by Portrait of a Lady on Fire's
Yes, good to see you here.
Nomi Merlant, I believe. Might have butchered her name. But I think there's definitely some elements where it's like, I'm pretty sure it isn't by the end of the film. It's somebody else again, because it's somebody at her book launch, which obviously Nomi wasn't there, at least as far as we're aware. But I think
Hmm.
surely Tar would be able to point her out of that crowd in a very open space, in a very well lit room, and not a huge amount of people. So yeah, potentially another person that was kind of in her circle but didn't fall for her advances, maybe.
You make a really interesting point. Actually, I'll need to revisit that next time I watch the movie because I think I'm interested to go back and unpack this movie again. I think it's worthy of that. When I have the 2 hours 45 minutes spare, and I'm not catching up with the rest of the movies this year. But I think you're right. The thing that really is the thing that lasts about this movie ultimately is Blanchett's performance. I think she, for me, of the performances I've seen in the past year, is a sure lock in for an Oscar for this. I think
Mm.
she is, so commanding. I think any other actor who would have been in this position would not have met the challenge like Blanchett did. You can tell she's just throwing herself into it. I read a really good review from Peter Bradshaw of The Guardian. He made a really good point here where he said, no one but Blanchett has the right way of wearing a two-piece black suit with an open-necked white shirt, the way of shaking her hair loose at moments of abandon, the way of letting her face become a Tutankhamun mask of contempt. Pretty right. I think that's right. I don't think anybody could have pulled off that poise and the costuming and all that is entailed that Blanchett does. I think it's a career best performance.
Yeah, I mean, she takes the pretentious rich white woman and falls into that world very well. I will say this though, I was upset at the lack of conducting scenes. I don't think she got a
Mm.
chance to show that she could truly conduct, and there are elements where she plays the piano and you do not see her hands, and those are the only moments where I'm like, she is so in this character, but she can't actually conduct or play piano
ah, ah,
potentially.
I've heard though, but I can't say for the piano. I've heard that I haven't heard the OST, the original soundtrack for this movie, but the pieces of music that are being conducted that you see Tar orchestrating in the movie are actually being conducted and for the soundtrack by Kate Blanchett. She did learn how to conduct.
Okay. Well, I
So
do think the amount of long scenes we get of people just talking, I assume this film would end with Kate Blanchett doing a 10-minute conducting. You hear everything, but you're only seeing her conducting. This film, I just was like, as soon as I saw the opening, I was like, at some point, we're going to get a 10-15 minute scene of music and conducting, and that is it alone. And we didn't get that. I'm not saying I'm disappointed because I assume that's what we get. I'm just saying I'm pointing it out. All right.
that's it. I think we should keep it there. I think we could end up doing a whole episode on Tar. It's
Yeah.
it's that interesting. But I'd be really interested. Please, 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 anybody listening, just kind of comment in on our Instagram page or on our Spotify or whatever, just to let us know what you think about the movie if you've had a chance to see it. Because um, I think you can go either way. It depends what you bring to that movie or what your cultural stance is, and I think it's a fascinating uh, brave movie to tackle these issues and have an interesting stance on. So yeah, I big fan.
I think I'm a fan. Definitely worth the watch
We think.
if you're intrigued and of a similar mindset. I went to see another new release, Chris, which obviously we already talked, but M3GAN.
It's me. Yeah.
It's M3GAN. It's M3GAN. I know on Wikipedia it says M3GAN is how it's
Yeah.
pronounced, but everybody likes to write on Wikipedia. You can't trust Wikipedia. Yeah, M3GAN, the AI doll film with a massive marketing push, especially on the
Oh,
dancing
yeah.
scenes, which there are actually very little of.
Became a TikTok phenomenon, didn't it?
Yeah, very, very, very smart to take uh, an element of the film that doesn't last 30 seconds.
And make it the selling point of your movie. Yeah.
Yes. Unfortunately, the screening I went to see did not have the sound set up correctly. It was
Oh,
very quiet. In fact, my partner
I
left the
hate it
cinema
when
to
they
go
do
let
that.
somebody know that it was not quiet enough. Just because I'm really bad in those situations. I hate leaving the cinema and I hate talking to
Yeah.
people.
Can
So
can I
thank
just
you,
say
Anne.
like that is a can I just say that is a personal gripe of mine as somebody who is half deaf, completely deaf in my
Uh-oh.
left ear. Blast that baby up. Like please give me just the full volume. That's why I love any opportunities to see something in IMAX. At least I know I'm gonna be able to hear the movie. But yeah, yeah. Oh,
You
it's
would have
unfortunate.
hated it, Chris, because it was honestly, man, it's such a shame. Did ruin the experience of the film a little bit. Like they did turn it up a bit, but it wasn't like the 3D sound was not there, and it was kind of like you just wanted a TV remote and just be like, I'm just going to turn it up a little bit. I just want a
Yeah.
little bit more experience. Like jump scares were not landing because it's
There
just
was instead of like a bump, they were more like a
yes, exactly,
okay.
exactly. However, I still enjoyed the film, and I think the film is made to be enjoyed. It is about a young girl who loses her parents and is shipped off to live with her aunt, who is a toy maker, and in
Of
very kind
course.
of futuristic looking toys, and she's working on this, full sized child doll and instead of kind of parenting her, because she struggles with that, she basically decides to create this AI child doll companion for her, which also is a way of kind of showcasing it as the next big toy and a shifting point in the technology. Like all AI films, AI turns bad. And,
Mm,
but for interesting reasons of its kind of programming of protecting the child and ever learning and all that kind of stuff. It is campy, it is cheesy, it is funny. It's not particularly scary, but it is quite enjoyable. My biggest gripe is that it wasn't more stupid because it's very much I've seen this film before. I've seen it in Chucky, I've seen it in AI, I've seen it in every other AI film you can
yeah.
think of. It doesn't recreate the wheel. I wish it just leaned into those stupid elements even more because I think I enjoyed it, but I didn't love the film. I just enjoyed it and had a good time, but that was it. And I know maybe
I
you
think
might be
that's probably
saying,
the intended purpose of the movie, isn't it? I
yeah,
think it is. What came to my mind was AI meets Chucky. So if it delivers, I guess so. But yeah, that's kind of how I've heard about the movie responding with people in general is that, it advertises, it sells what it advertises, and that's about it.
yeah, definitely. They've already announced a sequel. It's doing well, so in a couple of
And
years we'll
Forgan?
get M3GAN 2.0.
Oh,
Uh, I hope that they really, really lean into the silliness. I'd love to see this film directed by somebody with like true 80s B movie sentimentality,
hmm.
because I think it would be an absolute blast. So that's just my little mini review of M3GAN there, because I know you haven't seen it yet, Chris. But like you messaged me the other day, you were saying it's a video on demand movie, and you're right. You
Not
are
to
right. It
belittle it,
is.
but
And to be honest, the sound would probably have been better coming through my
your
through my
soundbar at
speakers,
home.
my soundbar. Yeah, which is a shame. But there you go.
It
Come
seems to
on.
be. it seems to be the thing at the minute, isn't it? Like last year we had Scream come out in January. We're now getting the January horror releases. Is now it's I think it's a pretty good way to pick up the winter blues, though, isn't it? I think
Mm,
there's nothing more distracting and taking you out of everyday life than a horror movie. So, but hopefully, when I go to see it, I'll have better feelings towards it. I've heard
hopefully.
people like it.
Yeah. Come on, View, Longwell Green. Uh,
Pitch your volume up, for goodness
usually you're good. This was not great. And the cinema
sake.
was freezing, all right? Absolutely freezing.
Yeah, they all are. When
They
has the cinema
warned us
ever
going
warned?
in. That's how bad it was. They warned us going in. It's cold.
It's
And you're like,
cold.
oh, God's sake.
This,
Literally,
I,
my feet frozen by the end. And you're like, thank God it's a short film.
yeah, it's not really the time of year to go to a 4DX screening anyway, where they're blowing wind on you voluntarily. Um,
Mm,
no, well, that's good to hear, Alex. I think we should move on to talking about the BFI list we have been pushing further. We're still doing that. Yeah, early days. We're not quitting yet. We've got two movies to talk about on the BFI list today. One I've watched recently, and the other because I've seen it before. For you, this was your first time for both of them. Um, and the first one was Once Upon a Time in the West, which is a movie I was so nervous and excited for you to see because, as I mentioned last week, one of my favorite movies of all time.
mm.
So it always hurts me really bad when you don't respond to something that means a lot to me. Um, that's a bit basic, but that's just how I feel. You're my friend, and I like to share things. So,
No,
how
of
did you feel
course.
about Once Upon a Time in the West?
I absolutely loved it. I thought it was absolutely brilliant.
That is so relieving.
I was swept away with it. Another 3 hour film. Love them. Getting through a lot of those at the moment. But yeah, man, just completely swept up in that world. I was ready, and I just wasn't expecting everything to be so kind of patient. Like there's a lot of long takes here. There's a lot of kind of slow moving development. But oh my god, every character introduction is just kind of perfect. The
Mhm.
way the camera moves through a scene and reveals more as it kind of goes on. Oh, absolutely delicious. And my absolutely favorite moment is when we kind of pan from the train station as Mrs. McBain first arrives in the western town. I don't know all the details,
Yeah,
and it kind of goes from this like train station. You're like, oh my gosh, it's in the middle of nowhere. Pans over the station and into this western town, and we follow through this western town. It's like almost like arriving at a theme park.
yeah, and the music
Um,
swells as that shot
oh
pans up, and it's amazing. That's a scene I think about whenever I think about this movie. So I'm
yeah,
glad you picked that.
the music is so good. Yeah, I loved everything about it. The kind of iconography of the characters. Obviously, there's an element of they're not characters, like, but this film is like playing with like action figures essentially,
Mhm.
but treating it with such grandiose and operatic style. Yeah, no, I absolutely loved it. And Henry Fonda, is it Henry Fonda?
Henry Fonda, yeah.
Henry Fonda. Oh, what a great villain. And his piercing blue eyes, ice cold. Oh, so
Well,
good.
obviously this was directed by Sergio Leone, who is, I think a lot of people nowadays, if you haven't seen any of his movies, will at least know that he is a big influence on a lot of directors. I think Tarantino being kind of the biggest one, who's blatantly like Sergio Leone is my idol, and a lot of the music cues that I use in my movies and the shots are inspired by his movies. Um, so yeah, this is no different. Henry Fonda was notoriously he had done the western genre to death by this point. We're talking 1968. This is the death, kind of the beginning of the death of the western genre. Nobody's wanting to really see them anymore, and Henry Fonda is getting a bit long in the tooth as well. So whenever Sergio Leone first approached Henry Fonda to play the villain of Frank, he refused it. He flatly refused it. Henry Fonda had been typecast to this point. He had always been the good guy. He'd never been the bad guy before. And the thing that really got him on board, Sergio Leone went back to him and said, Henry, I want you to think. What if you see a shot of a kid walking down a dusty road? He is playing, he's just in his own little world. Suddenly you hear a gunshot and the kid falls to the ground dead. The camera turns around and pans to Henry Fonda, and the crowd loses it. And he was like, "Yep, I'll do the movie."
Nice.
He also turned up to set the first day with brown contact lenses because he thought villain classically, and Sergio Leone was like, "No, get that shit out. We need your piercing blue, icy eyes to kind of pronounce the coolness of this character." And yeah, I think he's one of the most iconic villains of all time. I think it's a real like stroke of genius.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And when it's revealed, kind of why Harmonica, the Charles Bronson character, is there and why he's involved so much, it's this kind of brilliant realization. Excellent. Really excellent. However,
Mm.
Charles Bronson,
He's
I
not the most
think
charismatic in the cast.
he's the weakest link of this film, I think, unfortunately. First of all, weird face. Um,
Whoa! I think there's a lot of people who are big fans of Charles Bronson, so they might be a bit
No, I guess that's a bit harsh. He can't change that, but he could change. He could
bear. He looks like
change.
a human bear. He's got a face
Yeah,
of like a mangled bear, which is fun to look at, but not overly emotional.
he is not very convincing playing that harmonica.
Kind of the charm as well as the movie, isn't it? The whole spaghetti western dubbing thing. I think it does a pretty good job. The movie in general, like making you forget that the dubbing's like a big part of it. But yeah, the harmonica stuff is it can be rough.
But a great motif throughout the film. Yeah, just excellent. It was interesting as well. So, when I was looking at kind of reviews afterwards, and kind of putting my own thoughts together, I was interested that a lot of people said that this isn't even his best western. His best western is The Good, Bad, and the Ugly. Right?
I have seen all of his spaghetti westerns. This is my favorite.
Oh,
I
okay.
think I think they're all great. This is different to the rest because Good, Bad, Ugly, the Dollars trilogy, it has a bit more of an upbeat sort of tempo to it. It's a bit
Hmm.
more of an action movie, and that's really fun in its own way. But I just love the slowness and the patience of this movie, the
Mm.
musical cues, capturing the grandiose of the West, these wide frames. I just think it's beautiful, and it's the most romantic interpretation of the West I have ever seen. Um, I know, and Claudia Cardinale paints such a beautiful image on the screen. It's just a striking actress. Jason Robards is really funny as Cheyenne. He's like the well needed little piece of humor in the movie.
I thought he was brilliant. I really liked him. He's such an interesting character. He has one of the best character introductions as well, I think.
Mm.
Obviously, kind of hearing his escape off screen through sound. A lot of great use of sound in this film as well. And then kind of his kind of presence in the bar as everybody's on edge. Yeah, Cheyenne is great.
Well, I'm just really really glad you like the movie, Alex. So I can rest easy.
I need to watch Good, Bad, and the Ugly now. It's not on the top 100 though, even though I saw a lot of people saying it's better. I know you don't think it's better, but yeah, I guess maybe a lot of critics feel the same way.
By a hair they're different. You can argue either way. They are just different types of movies,
Mm,
but both worthy of that of being in the top 100. I think.
nice.
Um, but that wasn't the only movie we watched on the BFI list. Alex, can you introduce the other one we watched?
Yeah, so the other film is probably the oldest film I've ever seen. I think we mentioned last week that we both kind of have kind of pretty major blind spots in the silent film era, which I think a lot of people who enjoy film probably still do. It is one of those kind of slightly disregarded eras. Might get a bit of a comeback with old Babylon doing the rounds at the moment. Who
Mm-hmm.
knows? But yeah, so we watched Buster Keaton's The General from 1926, just shy of 100 years old.
Another good thing about this movie, as well as another movie we reviewed last week, Black Girl, it's just over an hour long. It's not a heavy commitment.
No, it isn't. It isn't. And I made sure to actually put it up on my projector. So I got all
Oh,
cozy in bed
such a
and
good
had it
idea.
displayed on the wall. I really enjoyed it. it's a lot more entertaining than I thought a silent movie could be. That's my ignorance. That's my naivety. It's basically we follow a train driver
Johnny
who
Gray.
Johnny Gray, who's trying to impress the girl by joining the Civil War, I guess, in the Confederate side, right?
And just
Um,
and she's not worth it. She is. I didn't like her.
She is not worth it. That is correct. Like, she's very rude, but he doesn't really explain why he wasn't allowed either. Like, they just say you're essential to drive the trains. Like, you're not joining the army.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty important role, but he doesn't explain this to her. Anyway, I guess there's not much of a
Maybe
script.
it's because he's so short.
Maybe. Anyway, he gets wrapped up in the war because there is I don't know, I guess a plot to steal the train and blow up bridges, and his wannabe lover that he wants to impress gets captured in the process, and starts a massive kind of train chase
Yep.
that
The original
lasts
Mad Max movie.
pretty much that goes on throughout the whole film, back and forth, and hilarity ensues. It was brilliant. Lots of kind of physical comedy, which I guess is all you really can do in the silent
Mm.
era. But yeah, just a young, sorry, not young, a 1920s Tom Cruise crawling on the front of real trains and putting his life at risk for the cinematic experience.
It is absolutely, it's crazy the stuff that he does. You're literally witnessing a man continually try to kill himself all in the name of art. Sing the scene. It is mental. And you're like, right, I'm looking for the seams here. I'm like, right, that background looks too good to be a projector, projecting background in the 1920s that we see that rotate on a sort of spinny mechanism. No, he's really on a train on the side of a mountain, and it's bonkers. And it only, you're agape the whole time. You're just sort of in awe and you're kind of laughing at the absurdity of it. I think I find myself laughing more at the absurdity of the stunts that he was doing more than the actual humor in it. At times, I think the very famous one that, even if I think people have seen in montages of isn't the cinema great, and 100 years of cinema, they've seen these montages where you can see Buster Keaton at the front of the train holding one of these 4 by flipping
The
10
railway
meter.
sleepers.
Yes, one of these big. Thank you for absolutely saving my life there. One of these, as you said, railway sleepers, and absolutely, like, there's this. He has to, like, throw one of them onto another one to make it flip so that the train doesn't hit it, and it's like the precision of that is crazy. And, like, you're like, what? How did you do that? Was that only in one take? And what would have happened if you missed that? You know,
Yeah.
that's the kind of stuff you come away with this movie. It's really, really exciting. There's a big the finale of this movie where it's literally fireworks going off, where they blew up the train, and the
Yeah.
train that was a real bridge and train
Yes.
explosion. It
It was
cost.
like, how else at that time?
I read up online that it was at that point of time, in money talk, in 1926, it cost $750,000 in 1926 for that one shot. That is, how did anybody give him the money to do this? It's crazy, and the movie wasn't even a big success.
No, it wasn't a big hit at all, and I think Buster Keaton, because it was like his own film company for a bit, and he had to go sign with one of the big studios because he just
Mhm.
nobody wanted to give him money again to make a
Yeah,
film by himself, and he had to be overseen. And it's
listen,
funny because now, as we're going through this list, highly regarded as one of the greatest films of all time.
it is crazy, and it's yeah, and I think this ended up being the biggest movie he ever did, and he never made something as I think he made great pieces of film afterwards, but nothing as grandiose or epic as this. But how did people not connect with it at the time? People must. I think this is 3 years shy of being 100 years old. It is so impressive. But not to circle around a little bit, I just want to talk about the the female character again, Annabelle Lee. I'm sorry, I'm not to hear. She
Oh,
is a
she's a
horrible.
Mary Sue.
She's a horrible person. I mean, the she gives him the ultimatum and chastises him and scolds him for not joining the war effort. She's like, I am not going to be even interested in you at all, she blatantly says, unless you're going off to risk your life. That's a true man.
So I'll
And it's
only
just
talk to you again once you're in uniform is one of the lines, even though
oh,
not spoken because of silent film.
yeah, exactly. But it's like whoa. I mean, like the ideals of like how men and women should relate to each other and how what a man should do for a woman is just it was so different back then, and it's so interesting. 1926. You think the American Civil War was the 1860s? I mean, you're watching a movie that is only 60 years after the American Civil War, something that's like pretty fresh in time period. It's in, the people who are
Yeah.
on screen would have been alive, some of
Which,
them during the American Civil War. So I think that's just amazing historical document in itself.
which I find really interesting as well, because obviously, we're watching a character in the film who's on the side of the Confederacy, which are the
Mm,
guys who lost. And the event that it's actually based on is completely role reverse. It was the Union army. I don't know my Civil War history that well, but
interesting.
apparently the event that it was actually based on is completely the other way around, and basically was the Confederacy were the bad guys, but in this they're the good guys. And I kind of wonder why that was. I don't know what the kind of
What?
feelings around that time why America might not
Mm,
have wanted the Confederacy to be the bad guys. I'm pretty sure that they didn't. They lost, right? Like slavery
yeah,
became less of a thing in the
yeah.
states around that time. That was the
Yeah,
whole thing that the
I find
Confederacy
that
wanted.
interesting too. I don't think I haven't got any answers for it. I haven't done my
Please
research.
find some.
Yeah, I'll try to find some and talk to you privately about it later. But I don't know what Buster Keaton's preoccupation was. If he maybe he was a Confederate sympathizer, but it was kind of interesting to see a movie from the Confederate perspective, even though it was like a self glorifying sort of thing.
Yeah,
Usually the Confederates are demonized, like please see every movie ever made about the American Civil War. Um,
yeah.
but no, it was very interesting nonetheless. But as it stands, it's just a straight up, if you like trains, this is your movie.
Oh
This is
yeah,
your
yeah.
movie.
Francis Bourgeois is going mad. If he hasn't seen this film, he's going to go absolutely nuts watching this. I want to be in
Yeah.
a screening with Francis Bourgeois. Right?
Oh, one other interesting thing I read also about that train crash that we were speaking about was the train stayed in the water in that river up until the Second World War. It wasn't like removed, and it was only removed whenever the American war effort, came down to the river to salvage the train for metal parts.
Shit, we need that train.
Oh god, we need that thing. Yeah, so I found that fascinating too. It sat there for about 20 years after the movie was made. So you still
I wish it was still there. It'd be great to as a tourist attraction.
just be a lot of rust and like completely contaminated, polluted water. Yeah.
Yeah, not the most environmentally friendly film ever made. Lots of coal. Saying that, it was steam trains, I guess. Actually, maybe I'll take that back.
Yeah, a lot of steam, wood, and
A lot of
iron.
steam. Yeah, not a lot of coal, actually. I don't think there was any coal. I don't remember them chucking
There
coal
was
in there.
wood.
What?
It was
A lot of
the whole
wood.
movie was him chucking wood, trying to
It
chop
was,
up wood.
he was chopping wood all the whole time.
So I think we've come to the same consensus now, where I think this is a really good appetizer for what silent cinema can accomplish, and I will definitely be, chasing more silent cinema as we go along. And we do
There's
have
definitely
more
a
ones.
couple in the list, I
Yeah,
think.
there's
And I'm pretty
Chaplin's.
sure there's Chaplins, and I'm pretty sure there's a couple more Buster Keatons, right?
Yes, we also have Sherlock Jr., which is also pretty highly regarded. Well, of course, it's higher in the list than the general. So yeah, looking forward to catching up with that one too.
Yeah, great so far. Really enjoying it.
Hmm.
Excellent. Well, that has been the episode for this week. We are taking a little 1 week break next week, so you won't be hearing us, but maybe it gives you guys time to catch up on some Sight Sound, BFI greatest films of all time list, and maybe you can join in with a discussion. You can find that discussion over on our Instagram, and you can like and subscribe on all podcast platforms. Wherever podcasts are cool, we are there because we're the coolest podcast.
Although we might take down the cool status a little bit on our part.
With the coolest podcast, Chris. Leave it be.
Sorry,
all right?
I need it. Yeah, I forgot.
So join us in a couple of weeks when we will be discussing more of those films and potentially some new releases as well. This has been The Film Angle. I'm Alex.
And I'm Kris.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.